This time around, it's the turn of Microsoft Exchange Server 2019. How does it work? What does it do? Stick around. You've come to the right place. Hi there YouTubers, welcome back to the channel. Andy Malone, Microsoft MVP, as well as a Microsoft certified trainer. Well, I've had lots of requests for it, so here we go. I thought we'd take a look this time at not the cloud, but on-premises, because on-premises is such an important component of cloud computing. And you're probably thinking, what on earth are you talking about, Andy? Well, of course, many companies have a hybrid solution. That means that if you're an organization with thousands of users, thousands of mailbox, you can't just simply flick a switch and move instantly to the cloud. It assumes that you need to have some kind of on-premises coexistence. So over the next few sessions, we're going to take that to the next level. And I thought a good place to start was with a product called Exchange Server 2019. And what we're going to do here is just get to know it. So some of the basic features, how to get started, how to set things up, and just kind of find your way around. All right, so without further ado, of course, if you've not subscribed, go ahead, click on that subscribe button, ring that bell so that you don't miss out on any future posting. And of course, I love your comments, questions, and your feedback. So without further ado, let's get to the demo. So what I thought we might do is I'm going to give you a grand tour, if you will, of Exchange 2019. Really, one of the most important areas here is this is where you're going to be working most. So here in recipients, we have got different types of recipients. So mailboxes, groups, resources. Now resources can be things like meeting rooms. In fact, if I click on the drop down arrow, you can see you can create a room mailbox or an equipment mailbox. So for example, if you wanted to schedule a meeting room or a piece of equipment, let's say a projector or something like that. Mailboxes are typically mailboxes within the organization. They don't necessarily have to be. So for example, you can create a mailbox for somebody who's external to the organization, and I'll explain that in a moment. We also have contacts as well, and this is contacts, external contacts, so customers, suppliers, and so on. One thing that you can also do is create what we call shared mailboxes. So for example, you can create a mailbox for a team of people, let's say a sales team or something like that. And finally, we have the option here, that the migration option, which is your migration tool to the likes of Microsoft 365, for example. So you can move to a different database, so from a different platform to another, and you can also migrate out of Exchange on premises. Okay, so we're going to kick off. First things first, you're going to want to create a mailbox for a user, and you can do this in a couple of ways. I can either create a new mailbox, so brand new mailbox, and this is typically for a user who is already in your organization, all right? Or you can also create what we call a linked mailbox, okay? And a linked mailbox typically links a mailbox here to an external asset that you can have. Let me create one and I'll show you. So I'm going to create a user mailbox here, and it's going to say, okay, what's the name of this user? I've got a user called Abby, let's say. Okay, so I'm going to create a user called Abby. Now, is Abby an existing user or a new user? Now, if you click on new user, it will create a completely new user. And as you can see, it's filling in these Active Directory components as well. So it's like a one portal to rule them all, if you will. Now I'm going to create an existing user. So it says, okay, which is the user that you want to create the mailbox for? And you can filter this as well, of course. Now, the other thing that you can do is you can just simply type in the name of the user that you're looking for. And if I just press and enter there, it shows me that actually I've got two options here, and I'm going to take Abby Skinner. So I click OK, and you can see that I don't need to go in here because, of course, this has already been filled in for me. So all I'm doing is I'm extending the user account to include an additional mailbox. So I'm going to click on Save, and you can now see that Abby's mailbox has now been created. All right, and this has now been connected. So Abby, I'm going to go ahead and double click her account, and very, very important, these are some of the attributes for Abby's account. So you can see her details are here, her username at adatum.com, and at the bottom here it says, do you require the user to change their password at next login? And occasionally, you know, if you were Satya Nadella, for example, at Microsoft, you may not want to be discoverable from your staff. So you might want to hide that from any address lists that you have. I'm not going to cover all of these settings, but just give you a little tour of them. So it shows me my mailbox usage. Now, the reason I'm getting this error message is because Abby's not logged on. So that's the reason why she's getting that message. And you can see that she's got a 2 GB options of a mailbox. Of course, you can configure that. You can customize the mailbox size if you want to. All right. So I'm just using the default quota settings at the moment, but you can, of course, change that if you want to. Other things that you might find in here include your general contact information, and you can see that this has been picked up from Active Directory. Your organization. This is quite useful. You could have let's say a manager in here. So for example, if I browsed here, I have a user called Alan, and Alan, let's say, is Abby's manager. And what that means is if Abby's account was deleted or moved to a recycle bin, then Alan would have access to Abby's mailbox for 30 days. The next tab down is the email address. All users, of course, have what we call an SMTP type address. This is sometimes referred to as a UPN, or user principal name. So Abby at adatum.com, for example. The next one is the Mailbox Features, and this is probably one of the most important tabs. So have you created a mailbox sharing policy, a role assignment policy? So is Abby going to have any kind of administration rights? Are you going to set up a mailbox retention policy? And things like address book policies, all of which I will cover in a later video. Litigation Hold. So Litigation Hold is a fantastic feature for legal compliance, and it allows you to place a user's mailbox on hold as part of a digital investigation. So if you suspect that the user's no good, if that user is on litigation hold, what that means is that the user's account continues to work normally, but when the user tries to delete something, it means that the recycle bin, the user's waste bin, is never emptied. And you can also switch on archiving as well. Another archiving feature, by the way, allows you to create a personal archive. So any mail that the user wants to keep for a long period, they can stick it in there if they want to. You can also set up what we call message size restrictions, as well as message delivery restrictions. So by default, you get, in fact, you can set a maximum message size. So for example, in Microsoft Exchange Online, it's 35 megabytes, but you can actually increase it to 150 megabytes. Whereas here, there's no limit. It's not been set. Okay. Next, is the user or this mailbox a member of a group? In this case, no. You can also put in a little mail tip for your user. This is very cool. So when the user goes into Outlook, you can have a little message which appears on the top of the screen. So for example, if you need help, call 5555. Users can do this, but again, this is also a nice feature as well. Mailbox Delegation. So again, a number of settings here. Send as. So this is where, let's say, Miss Moneypenny wants to send mail as James Bond. So send as means that you're sending mail as that person. Whereas send on behalf of means Miss Moneypenny on behalf of James Bond. Full access means you've got complete full access of that mailbox. So as well as mailboxes, you can also create different types of groups as well as resource mailboxes. So for example, a room mailbox and an equipment mailbox. If you have contacts outside your organization, but you want them to appear in your mailing list, then you can either bring them in as a mail contact, so external user, or as a mail user. So looking through some of the other settings here, you have got permissions. And just like Microsoft 365, you have got a series of admin roles here. So by default, most users won't need any kind of admin rights. But if you do want a user to have admin rights, so for example, a security administrator, I can simply go into here. And of course, I can now add in the user and give them access to that role. Okay. Another role is the default role assignment policy. So this is slightly different because this is for users. So if I double click this, you'll basically see here, this is essentially what can your users see, okay? So they can pretty much see all their apps, they can see all their email options, all their text messaging, all their scheduling, and so on. So you might want to make or create a role assignment policy, let's say for students in a school. So if I call this student policy, okay, and I can then say, yeah, okay, my contact information, profile information, yes, if the user is a member of any distribution groups, I don't want them to see marketplace apps, so I'm going to not tick that checkbox there. And do you want users to see my voicemail, diagnostics, team mailboxes, and so on? Get the idea? So you can click on and customize. You have this policy. Okay. So just as an example, I could then go back to recipients and let's say go to Alan here. And in Alan's mailbox, if I come down to Mailbox Features, you can see Role Assignment Policy. When I click on the drop-down arrow, I could assign that student policy to Alan if I wanted to. So next is compliance management, which is a topic in itself. And this is everything to do with security and compliance. So things like e-discovery and hold, mailbox auditing, data loss prevention policies, retention policies, and retention tags tend to go with retention policies. So a retention policy, for example, will contain a number of retention tags. Okay, so when a user receives an email, they just basically right-click the email and select a retention tag. And you can also enforce this automatically as well. So journaling would show me a list of all your messages, where the messages are coming from, who they're going to, but not the actual content of the message, simply the metadata. The Organization tab allows you to set up sharing between yourself and other organizations. And this is sometimes referred to as a federation trust. You can also customize things like address lists. So, for example, if you don't want a distribution list for all your users, you might want to create one just for a specific location. For example, Bergen, Manchester, London, which just contains the staff from those locations. The Protection tab works alongside compliance management to manage things like malware. Now, by default, you get something called EOP, Exchange Online Protection, which is free, and you also get access to this malware filter as well. And this really just has the basic malware protection, and you probably would want something in addition to this. It does a pretty good job though. Mobile settings really talk about active sync. This tends not to be used anymore. Typically, if you're on the likes of Microsoft 365, you might use, let's say, Intune to manage your mobile devices and your email. But Active Sync basically ensures that mail is synced to the Outlook client on your mobile device. Now, the one thing that sticks out here is the Servers menu. The Servers menu shows me a list of all the Exchange servers within my organization. Now, in this case, I've only got one Exchange server called EX1. But in that server, I can also see my Mailbox Database. So remember, when you're on premises, it's you that has to make sure that this database is backed up and it's secure. All right. Whereas if you were in the cloud, this is what you pay your cloud vendor for. One of the ways to ensure that your databases are backed up is creating something called a DAG, or a database availability group. So if you had multiple servers, you could create a database availability group, and it essentially clusters or mirrors the database between two servers. Every database or every Exchange server also has virtual directories. And these directories are essentially components that are running in IIS, or Internet Information Services. So at the moment, you'll notice I'm browsing this web page through the internet, or through the intranet, I should say. So the Exchange Control Panel, the Exchange Web Access Service, all of these are running essentially in IIS. So Internet Information Services is a core component of Exchange Online. Certificates. So security is absolutely paramount. But you can see that these certificates have been internally generated. And if I just double click on one here, you'll see that it gives you the details. So the certificate is valid, and what services is it valid for? Finally, the hybrid option. So more and more customers are moving to the cloud. And if you that's great. If you've got a small number of users, you can do a migration. Fantastic. But if you're a very large organization, you're going to look at, or you're going to want some kind of coexistence. And that coexistence can be provided through the hybrid configuration wizard. Now, the hybrid configuration wizard has a number of prerequisites. You must be using Azure AD Connect. You must be using a verified domain name within your organization, and you must be using a valid certificate, digital certificate. All right. And then you would run the configuration wizard. I plan to do a future session on hybrid email. So there you have it, Exchange Server 2019 getting started. I hope you found that useful, and always, if you did, I'd really appreciate your feedback. So comments, questions and feedback below, please. I appreciate it. If you've not subscribed to the channel, please go ahead and click on that subscribe button and ring that bell, and you're not going to miss out on the good stuff in the future. And as always, please like and share the video. I would really appreciate it. Okay, so that's us for today. I will see you next time. So you stay safe, and I'll see you soon. Take care. Thanks for dropping by. Hope you enjoyed the video. Go ahead and click on the subscribe button and ring that bell, and you won't miss a thing. See you next time.